Welcome back to the Mind Goals podcast, hosted by yours truly, Siobhan Higgins, sport and performance psychology consultant, professional soccer player, and yoga instructor. Today, I have another sport and performance psychology consultant and my very own professor, Dr. Lennie Waite.
Thank you for having me.
Welcome.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
I'm really excited we can make this happen. And I was going to have more of a mouthful of an introduction for you, but I don't know everything that you're doing right now.
Okay.
So point of this podcast is for everyone to get to know who you are to me. So I mentioned that you're my professor. I went to the University of St. Thomas, for those of you who don't know listening, and Dr. Waite started our program, and it was the MASP program. Yeah. So
Masters in Applied Sport and Performance Psychology.
Exactly. And I had no idea what that meant at the time. And I remember coming back, I think it was 2021. Is that when it started for you, or 2022?
I think 21.
21.
Yeah.
And I remember just being on campus, seeing Dr. Joe, and then she told me there was a sport psychology program, and that was really interesting to me. Yeah. And so I asked you to hop into a class. I didn't really know who you were. I heard you were a Rice University alumni, that you ran track and field there and played soccer there. Correct? Yeah. Awesome. So we have another Rice alum. This is like my third alum. I mean, Houston. Yeah. But and so also you are an Olympian of the Great Britain.
Yeah, I am.
Very cool. Yeah, that's actually that's the coolest one for me. From my point of view.
Yeah, it's one that when you throw in conversation, people are like, what?
Yeah, because I mean, super cool, to be honest. And then you are Scottish.
Yeah, born in Scotland, parents are English, so
yeah, similar to me. Yeah, I was the only one in my family born in Scotland, and my dad is English.
Okay, very good.
So today, for everyone listening, I am going to ask Dr. Waite some questions. I do probably know most of these answers, but Dr. Waite to me is my advisor, my professor, and someone I look up to in the field, and a part of the reason why I'm even sitting here today. So first and foremost, now we know where you're from, but you're born in Scotland, right?
Yep, born in Scotland, then moved to Switzerland.
Okay.
Then Austin.
Oh, okay.
Then Singapore.
All right, I did not know this.
Then back to Austin.
Okay.
Yeah, I got some tricks up my sleeve.
Yeah, tell me how that went. Like, what were the timelines on that?
So we were in Scotland until I was 2, so I didn't live there for super long. Then we moved to Switzerland. We were there until I was 7, and then moved to Austin, and then after 6th grade, went over to Singapore, did 7th and 8th grade in Singapore, and we were supposed to stay in Singapore. This is some sport reasons why we moved back. I didn't really know at the time, but when we moved over there, there's not a booming sports industry for 12, 13, 14-year-old girls in Singapore. I didn't necessarily notice, but my parents could kind of see, she's not playing as much soccer. I remember I played on a boys team. It was like the Australian New Zealand Sports Association boys team that I played for. I would still run because you can run anywhere, but the competition was really different. And I think my parents kind of realized they were supposed to be in Singapore for about 5 years. So were they going to move me back after my sophomore year of high school? Like, that's sort of a weird time to move. Mm-hmm. Or should me and my mom just move back to Austin, let me get back into like club soccer, running real high school track, starting and staying in high school in one place, and just kind of support a more smooth development through high school. And my parents decided that. Looking back on it, like, super thankful that they did that. I don't think at the time I understood what they were doing. Yeah. And I specifically remember when we left to move to Singapore, I was like one of the best on my club soccer team, super good at running. And I came back and I was like not nearly as good.
Oh, wow.
And that was like, that's a lesson that I carried with me forever, because it was the first time I realized like you can lose skills really quickly, but then you can also gain them quickly. Mm-hmm. So I remember like going back out to my old club soccer team and being like, wow, I'm like I'm so much worse than these players 2 years after like not being in an intense soccer environment. But I think my coach was great. He was like, Lennie, we'll get you back up to skill. And like my parents were great too. And I think I was motivated. And I was also like a little embarrassed to not be as good as I was when I left.
Yeah.
And I just like worked my butt off for a few months. And then I was like, oof, okay.
We're back.
We're back. It's okay.
What age was that when you returned?
My freshman year of high school.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that would have been a punch to my ego, I think.
That was a thing. Like, I think the thing I remember feeling was like a little bit of embarrassment, and also like my coach seeing that I wasn't nearly as good as I used to be, and like, ooh, but it was great. Made it through. Yeah,
made it through, and then progressed to next levels.
Yeah.
And so we're back, and you were in England this time.
When we moved back to Austin.
Oh, to Austin.
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
And then question that came to mind, were your parents in the military?
My dad was in the semiconductor industry. So like, he was with Motorola for a long time. Then he worked for a Singapore-based technology company.
Okay, gotcha. Wondering why the moves.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Okay, so you moved quite a lot in your youth.
Yes.
Or that's a decent amount, and big moves.
Big moves.
Yeah.
Also like a really great lesson in adaptability, like moving from like Switzerland is very different to Austin.
Yeah.
Which is very different to Singapore.
Yeah.
It's not like moving from like cities in Texas or even moving states. And again, like I remember when we moved to Austin for the first time, after the first day of school, I had like a ring of people around me just asking me to speak because I had a really British accent still.
Oh, okay.
So I would say things like, I would want a banana or a glass of water.
Yeah.
And everybody would be like, say this. And then within a week, I was like, I have to get rid of this accent so that I can actually make friends instead of be like a puppet toy for them.
Yeah.
Which now I wish I had some of my accents.
I know.
Still.
I was going to say, because freshman year, I feel like you would keep that.
Well, so this was the first time. So when I moved from Switzerland to Austin, this was in like third grade.
Oh,
so,
okay.
Yeah. Peer pressure, super high, immersed in my peer environment. And then once I lost it, never got it back.
Yeah. I moved to the US when I was 4, and I had a really thick Scottish accent, and it was very similar. And also people didn't understand me. Yeah. And I mean, when I went back to Scotland, I didn't understand people either, because 1, the accent, but then 2, the dialect, and then 3, the slang. Yeah. And so I'm like, what are these people freaking saying? So yeah, I experienced that. And I think very quickly we got rid of it because of fear. And also so young, and it's easy to kind of change. Okay, so we're back in the US. When, for me, let's see, my question really is, because you ran and then you played soccer all the way up to the collegiate level. But when did the Olympics come into play? When did you get called? How does that work? That's very foreign to me.
Yeah. So I will say I actually have this like storybook that I wrote in like first or second grade. Perfect. And it actually has me like going to the Olympics in soccer or track. It's like an option that I have in the book. It's like the Olympic Games, the rings, a soccer ball, and a running track. Wow. So, which
one do I want to do?
Yeah, which is strange because I actually I don't necessarily remember like that being a super big drive, but it was in my brain somewhere. I knew that was probably the ultimate goal in sport. And then in high school, I did both sports, and if anybody's like familiar with high school coaches, they like don't love sharing your time. So the cross country coach was mad when I would skip practice to go to soccer. The soccer coach was mad when I would show up tired from cross country.
Yep.
Looking back again, my parents must have done like a great job of kind of calming them and being like, you either get her to run in this race after not being at practice all week, or like you don't.
Yeah.
And then, to be fair, I always showed up and gave the best when I could, but I was mixing sports, and my parents helped me do that. And there were people that would try to push me to quit one or the other, but at the end of the day, they wanted me to run, they wanted me to play. So I was kind of able to balance both. And coming out of high school, I was recruited for both. But if anybody is a runner, like running's really painful. So it's like, not like you run a fast mile and you finish like, that felt amazing.
Yeah.
No. So in soccer games, like there was, it was less pressure. Like you didn't actually like play to a point where you feel like you're going to vomit,
Right.
It's like it was more comfortable sport to me.
Okay.
Not as much like in track too. I think I was good in high school, and a lot of expectation. Like every time I went to race, people were like, oh, you're going to win. And I like started to hate that. Whereas in soccer, it was like a team event. So that pressure felt more shared for me. So when I had the options to do both in college, I chose soccer. But as soon as I got there, I already started to miss like the independence of running, the fact that like what you put on the track, you get out in a performance. There's no, if there's a race, you can line up. There's no like benching or sharing time or
it's all you.
It's all you, which was like the reason I originally didn't like it. And then what I missed the most about it. And I think the thing at Rice, and like the soccer team was great too. We went to the NCAA tournament my freshman year. I played in every game. I got a lot better. I did love it, but I did miss running. And the track coach he basically was like, come run for us. And he removed all the pressure. He made it super fun. And he showed me a different side of the sport that I hadn't seen in high school. And then I wanted to run. So at that point, I remember in the summer in between my freshman and sophomore year, I was thinking, I don't know if I'm going to go back and play soccer, if I'm going to go back and run. So I remember I went back for soccer preseason, and halfway through preseason, I was like, I'm going to ask the cross country coach if I can switch. So I went to go ask him, and he asked me, how much running did you do in the summer? And I was like, I ran some 120s for like soccer training. I did like a couple beep tests.
Yeah.
And at the time he was like, why don't you finish the soccer season and then come out after soccer? And I was fine with that, but I was also like, oh man, I thought he was going to be like, yeah, come on over. Looking back, I would have gotten crushed running Division I college cross country. Those girls would have been running like, 50 miles a week. I was probably running 8 miles a week. Best thing he ever did to kind of protect me and actually allow me to be good enough in the sport. So it wasn't until my junior year that I actually ran cross country, indoor track, outdoor track.
Okay.
And I was fine, but I wasn't great. Like I didn't win any conference medals. I contributed to the team's performance. It wasn't until my senior year that I was good. And then my fifth year was the one I actually remember my coach, Jim, coming up to me and saying like, you're good enough to like actually make money, like go to Europe, make some money, run, and like you could train. Like you need to get in touch with Scotland and Great Britain, and you need to tell them that you're fit enough to like run for them. So that was when I was like, I guess Olympics are next.
Oh, wow. Okay. That's awesome. I also didn't know you could have a fifth year. Is that because 2 and 3?
So, because
two soccer and then 3 running.
Yeah.
Okay. And you can do that.
Yes.
Oh,
yes.
Very cool.
So I ended up doing my freshman year. So like you can, there are some, like I'm thinking I've worked with like a volleyball player who's come back to be like a high jumper, or I think even at Rice, we've recruited volleyball players to try and like throw the javelin or like, so yeah, you can come back as a fifth year in a different sport.
Okay. Yes. Actually jogging my memory. Cause I was considering whenever I wanted to start my master's program, I was like, what other sport can I try? They didn't really have much at St. Thomas. All right. That's very good to know. Yeah. Especially for people listening. Yeah. But what was your degree in your undergraduate?
So when I started at Rice, I started out as an economics major.
Okay.
And then I did a summer internship at Merrill Lynch in like private wealth. And I realized that career path was not for me. Like, I mean, my husband is a banker. It's a lot of time in front of spreadsheets, a lot of Excel, a lot of computer clicking.
Yeah.
And, you think like, economics, finance, working in a big bank. And the reality of it was like, this is not a match for who I was as a person. Loved the experience, super grateful for it. Showed up at Rice and basically went to my advisor and was like, what else can I do? Mm-hmm. Like, I think my soul will die if I sit in an office like this.
Yeah, not for everyone.
And she was like, why don't you do industrial organizational psychology? She's like, this is what I do. She's an incredible runner. She's run a marathon in every state and on every continent, Dr. Mickey Hebel.
Wow.
She has a family. She's a great mom. She's like an incredibly impressive, like she consults with businesses. She like leads initiatives. She's a great researcher. And I was sort of like, I mean, that's what you do. I wouldn't mind being like you. Like, that sounds cool. So I just kind of like followed her advice. And IO psychology is like, it's good to know a little bit about the business world. Like my experiences at Merrill Lynch were useful, and kind of thinking like, okay, like what is effective workplace design? How do you motivate employees? Like, man, we could do a better job of making this like a more invigorating like internship.
Yeah.
And then, so I was afraid to like drop my economics major, because my dad was like, oh, if you major in psychology, like, what are you going to do? Like wear socks and sandals? And and I was like, okay.
I think I had a similar conversation.
Yeah. So I was like, I kept the economics degree and I added the psychology degree.
Okay. So dual major.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But like, even now, like I made great grades in my economics degree. If my husband asks me like an economic question, he's like, how did you make like all A's at Rice? And you like can't even answer this question.
Would you say you were always good at school? Like was academics easy for you?
I would say I was always like pretty good at school. I was just kind of like had the standard of like, I think in high school, right, like honor roll was sort of like better make honor roll every semester, like better do varsity sport every semester. And I honestly just like kept that mentality at Rice, like have to, finish. I wanted to graduate cum laude, which I did. I wanted to just like, I kind of had thresholds. I wouldn't say like people sometimes challenge me on like, oh, you're a perfectionist. I definitely say I'm not a perfectionist. Like if something is like good enough to get me what I want, I'm like, ship it off.
Yeah.
But kind of have like goals and benchmarks for like, what's my like threshold of performance. And I always want to be just above it. And those are relatively high.
That's accurate coming from an outsider listening and just knowing, because, I was going to say that your performance level is like higher than average. So you just mentioned like your threshold is above, and I was thinking one time sitting in class and you coming like, sorry guys, it's just running, and I was like thinking to myself like, okay, like what was your pace? And you're like, oh, I just ran like 5 miles, and I was like, just ran 5 miles. You're like, yeah, and like it was like 5:40 today. It wasn't good. And I was like, 5 minutes 40. Hold on. I was looking around the room like, is anyone else listening to this? And you're like, yeah, I mean, I ran in the Olympics. So like, yeah, you're right. And then not to mention, don't you have like 3 degrees? Did you get do you have a master's as well? Yeah. So Dr. Waite is a very high performer, really good at what she does in her field and in sports as well. So not just sports, but academics as well, which is why I wanted to ask what you did. Yeah. And so jumping to the next degree, what was your master's in?
So in IO psychology. So I actually applied straight from Rice for my PhD program. And this is like, backtracking a little bit. So after my senior year, I actually didn't know, I hadn't committed to coming back to Rice for a 5th year. Like I was happy, like I had gotten a lot better at running that year, but I had already applied to grad school, and I had gotten into like George Mason for their PhD program, Columbia for a master's program. And I was going to go to one of those places, and the track coach like asked me to please stay 1 more year at Rice. Like, let me develop you 1 more year. I think you could do great things. Okay. I actually cried when he asked me to stay for a 5th year. Cause I was like, I'm delaying life. Like, I'm going to be old. Like, why would I just stay here? I have to move on. I have to be successful. I have to go to the next thing. And I don't know how he convinced me, but he was like, stay at Rice. And what we ended up doing is I could be like a non-degree seeking 5th year student. So I actually took grad school courses that were going to transfer into my PhD program. Okay. And I deferred. So I deferred admissions I actually deferred to Columbia. So I was going to just stay at Rice for 1 more year, do like 9 hours of credits that would transfer, and then go there. Obviously during that 5th year, I was a 2-time All-American that year. And I realized that I actually probably had the potential to train for an Olympic Games. And I know one of the biggest disruptions in the post-collegiate training environment is changing coaches and changing environments. Okay. So I reapplied to grad schools, and I applied to University of Houston so I could stay in Houston and continue to train with Jim and do my PhD there. So I applied straight to a PhD program, and you just get your master's along the way. Okay. I did not know that. And you said, because you said it like this is a common knowledge, you said changing coaches does what? It just adds another uncontrollable element, right? So if you think about an athlete's like performance trajectory, it's like if you've been with a coach for 4 years, like Jim knows when I show up at practice without me even opening my mouth, like are you ready to rock and roll? Are you tired? Do you need a day off? Like he can tell, I swear, he can tell by just looking into my eyes what I need that day. And that's something that takes time to develop with a coach. And I remember having this conversation with him because I could have taken my last year of eligibility and run at Columbia while I did my master's. I could have done that.
Yeah.
But I remember when I had this conversation with him, it was like, well, what's going to happen up there? Like that coach doesn't know you. And I did have a unique pathway. I didn't come from I'm not a purebred runner. I was a soccer player, transitioned runner. There were some quirks to the way that I trained because I, had a little bit of a late start. And he kind of really showed me the importance of like maintaining consistency in a coach, for success.
Yeah.
Which is important.
Yeah.
Which is something I bring to my clients all the time. Like there are benefits to maybe switching coaches sometimes. There are also massive benefits to longevity in a coach athlete relationship.
Yeah. And I would definitely agree. I mean, I've been on a handful of teams, and switching coaches, it's a whole culture change in itself, depending on where you are. I mean, the coach, and they're going to be different every single time.
Yeah.
Okay. This is so interesting because I am getting to know you a little bit more. So you're still in Houston. Also, I wanted to throw in the question, at what point did you meet your husband?
So I met him. So Matt went to Rice and he ran track there. So he originally went to South Carolina. He transferred to Rice his junior year. So by the time he came to Rice, like I had a boyfriend already. I had a friend group. He was cool. Like honestly, he threw the best parties, which is like when I would like go and hang out at his house all the time when he would throw parties. Like he always had a keg. I was like pretty good at keg stands, like postseason, right? Okay. The athlete mentality. Yeah. Like when I was locked in, I was locked in. When it was off season, it was like
work hard, play hard.
Yeah. And so he was like, we were good friends in college, and he was like super always, if I wanted to go do something fun, I could always call Matt and be like, hey, like, what do you have going on this weekend?
Nice.
And then when I started grad school, I broke up with my boyfriend that I'd been with all through Rice, and he'd stayed because he had a job. He like trading natural gas on the pipelines. I think that's what he was doing when he first graduated. And so we stared hanging out, and he was a rebound. But I like couldn't shake.
Do you tell him this? This is
there was a specific moment. Like we don't live too far from Agora coffee shop in Montrose. Yeah. And I like tried to break up with him there. And like sometimes we go by the coffee shop and he's like, hey, remember when you tried to break up with me there? And I'm like, I do. And you would not. Like I actually like laid it out perfectly, like trying to break up with him. And he like
here are
just
my reasons.
Basically didn't. He was like not taking it. He like laughed at me, and he was like, and I wasn't prepared for the reaction. And I was like, I guess you're my boyfriend.
I guess you were convinced.
Or
you didn't have a compelling enough argument.
Well, I just like, I was caught off guard. I thought that it was going to be like a super easy breakup, and he was going to be like, yeah, like, we've had fun, but like, I agree. And he's like,
no, you're actually going to be my wife, contrary to popular belief.
And so I remember specifically, I left and I called, and my roommate at the time was like, so did you guys like, did you end it? And I'm like, no, I actually think I'm his like official girlfriend now.
All I had to do was.
Yes, but yeah, no, Matt and I talk about these stories a lot. So yeah, okay. He knows.
So now married and 2 kids. Awesome. Because another thing I wanted people to know is that you're all doing all these things, but also a mother, which is a whole full-time job in itself. And I don't know. I only see it from afar, and I have the most, respect and admiration for mothers. I don't know how you do it, especially you. Yeah. But could you give some advice to mothers? How do you and for more people to know that you have your own business, correct? Yeah. So would you explain a little bit about what you do currently right now in today's day? Yeah.
So, got 2 kids, and then I would say I took the work ethic that made me an Olympic athlete, and I have like poured it into my to the world of sports psychology. So I work for the Air Force. So I work for their 711th Human Performance Wing. I'm remote work for them in Houston. Most of my team is in Dayton, Ohio, and I work a lot on research studies looking at performance enhancement in special warfare operators. So how do we people who are, jumping out of planes, saving lives, doing, all the things we need them to do. How do we actually like keep them performing really high, help them recover? And a lot of that is really research driven. So that's my role at the Air Force. And I'm working on a couple of super fun research projects there that just keep my brain going and help inform a lot of the things that I do with athletes on the ground.
Okay.
So through my private practice, I have a lot of individual clients. Olympic trials, track and field trials are going on right now. I have a few clients competing there. I have a client competing at the Olympic trials in gymnastics. I have a couple of clients who competed in swimming. So that's super fun. I really love working with people who have like big goals and like actually trying to help them like elevate, escalate, and get to those big goals. I also do the sports psychology work for the Houston Dash. So I contract with them. So help out the team, help out coaches, just like help try to create that performance environment there. And then I also help out with a startup. So we're currently working on an app. I'm the chief science officer there, where we're trying to really make sports psychology accessible, scalable, actionable for high school, collegiate, and professional athletes. So yes, I am like super busy, and sometimes I feel like I'm crazy.
Yeah. I can see why I was counting on my hands.
Yeah.
That's 4 major tasks,
I know.
not even including being a mother and
like even recently, like I was still teaching a class at St. Thomas, and I like sometimes adjunct over at Rice. And like I love doing all those things. And honestly, like it sounds like a lot, but all those kind of roles inform each other, and it's all in the. I feel like I'm better at my Air Force job because of some of the consulting I do with athletes to help inform what we should be looking at in research. Like what I learn at the Air Force helps me do a better job with my individual clients, right? All these, you're kind of pulling knowledge from different performance arenas and helping people. And I think I would get bored otherwise, but there are times when I'm like, oh, like what it would be like to just like work for one person, like 9 to 5. That would be.
Yeah. Like, so whenever you were at the University of St. Thomas, which is where I met you, you were a professor, you were the director of the program. You were still simultaneously doing X, Y, and Z.
Yeah. I was still doing stuff for the Air Force then. I think when I was at St. Thomas, my Air Force contract was like smaller. And then I was still doing some private practice stuff.
Yeah.
And
that's a lot.
Yeah, it was a lot. And, we didn't have like the program wasn't big, right? Like, we didn't have a ton of people to like help and support. And that was
difficult.
That was the hardest part.
Yeah. And it's still up and running at the moment.
I think so.
It's hanging on. So get your degree in while you can.
I know. It is. It's a hard, teaching is hard because when you have a PhD in psychology, and especially in sport and performance psychology, people, they'll pay you to advise, to consult, to lead big government grants, and to come and teach. It has to be like a true passion. And I did love it, but I needed the program to be bigger.
And you also have your CMPC, and are you also an LPC?
I'm a licensed psychologist. I'm an LP.
Okay, LP. Okay, we're going to take a moment and could you just run through your credentials really quick, just so I have them in order?
Yeah. So I would say, I have my PhD, and then I'm a licensed industrial organizational psychologist. So did all my supervision, took my EPPP, got that licensure. And then I'm also a certified mental performance consultant. So CMPC, which is typically what people look for when you're working with athletes on more like mental skills, performance enhancement. So those are my main credentials. And then within that, I'm in the US OPC, so the US Olympic and Paralympic Sports Psychology Registry. And then I'm an Olympian, but that's just,
that's just something that
it's like, that was in my previous life.
Yeah. And then let's talk about it. How was it being an Olympian?
Yeah, I mean...
And did you win any medals?
I didn't. I mean, I won medals in my career. I did not win any Olympic medals.
And how long did you compete for Great Britain?
Yeah, so I graduated in 2009, and I think I competed post collegiately until 2018. So I competed until the year that I got pregnant. Okay. Wow. And that was kind of my plan. Like I remember around 2017, 2018, starting to like crave, like, man, it would be sort of like one a family.
Yeah.
And I will say there's no reason I couldn't have gone back. Women can do it. But there was also, I also had this PhD that I wanted to use as well. Mm-hmm. So kind of double reasons there. So post collegiately, when I look back, of course, like when you're in your career, you always want more. Like that's one of the defining features of high performing athletes is they're never satisfied because there's always something more they can win. And then even at the highest level, like even once you've won Olympic gold, you're not satisfied because you now have to stay on top, which is even harder. And like the fear and pressure just gets even worse. So like I work with these people all the time and it's like, man, I wish you could look at your career like 10 years from now and realize how amazing it is, but they probably won't until they retire. So when I was in my career, I of course always wanted more, but when I reflect on it, I think I like was able to make a pretty major international competition every year, which even from an injury perspective, now I'm like, whoa, you actually, your body held up really well.
Yeah.
So I did a Commonwealth Games in Delhi in India in 2010.
Wow.
I did the World University Games in China in 2011. I made my first European team championships, I think in 2012. 2013, I think I was like a European team championships, maybe I think again. And then 2014, I did another Commonwealth Games. 2015, I did a European, team championships. And I think I qualified for the world championships that year, but wasn't taken. There was a whole, sports can be very political and horrible sometimes at the top. And then 2016, an Olympic Games, and European championships. And then 2018, I had another Commonwealth Games. And 2017, I did a World Championships. And then 2018, a Commonwealth Games. And then I was done.
Wow. And something I noticed while you're going through all of that is we didn't specify what event you ran.
Yeah, 3,000 meter steeplechase.
Yeah, which is
the best event. 7.5 laps, 35 barriers, 7 of them over a pit of water, just to add like a little bit of.
As if it wasn't enough.
Why not? Yeah. The Olympic trials are going on right now. So last night I watched the steeplechase at the US trials and like, man, just like, it's still my heart, just like, it's such a hard event. Like when you're running that last lap and you still have to jump over those barriers and there's that pit of water and like, you're wondering if you can lift your legs and you're trying to make an Olympic team. Like it's an intense event.
You said 7 laps?
7.5. Yeah. 3,000 meters. Yeah.
Goodness gracious. That I don't even know how you'd begin to train for that.
You just rerun a lot. I mean, at the peak of my training, I would say most of my training was around like 70, 80 miles in like the winter and then kind of, decrease my mileage per week. Runners talk about miles per week.
Yeah.
But sometimes there were a couple times in the winter that we experimented with high mileage. I think I hit 100 miles a week, which is like a ton. Like, when I say that, marathoners run 100, 120 miles per week.
Wow.
But yeah, it becomes like, but you're combining that with also like track speed and like hurdling and like jumping. And so when you think about just like how dynamic your body has to be, how explosive, how powerful, also how much endurance it has to have. Yeah. Looking back, I'm like, you put in some hard work.
Yeah. So that makes sense why at, the beginning of class, you would say that I was light work. It was just a jog. Yeah. With your kids in the stroller.
Yeah,
remember? You remember the children too?
Yeah, I know.
She's that woman.
I am. And I still run a lot. And like I run my daughter to
She's
school.
Riding her bike now, right?
Yeah, she rides her bike now, but and
to keep up with you.
She does. She does a great job. She's an incredible bike rider. And I push her in the stroller and a lot of people still see me running. And even somebody recently asked me like, oh, are you training for the Olympics still? And like, it's like, to me, like absolutely
mentally,
not.
Are you doing that? Actually.
A different kind. But when people ask me that question, it's really opening and like what Olympic athletes do and how they train. It's insane. Me jogging my kid in a stroller to school or like seeing me out on a 5-mile run or even out on a 13-mile run on the weekend, that's like nothing compared to what it takes.
Yeah.
But when you haven't lived in the world, it's like, oh my gosh, that girl is like working out every day. She must be training for something.
Yeah. No, this is
I would get crushed if I tried to go to any type of elite competition right now.
Yeah. Because that's just truly, this is like your normal level now. And it's to obviously to other people, to the general public, it's crazy. Like you're training for something, you are, still competing at the moment, which Not right. You don't you don't do any races anymore.
No, I mean, I did like a marathon relay for fun. Right. This is where people are like, what do you mean you did a marathon relay for fun?
Yeah.
So I like still,
not for me, but for runners. Yeah.
Yeah. And to me, running is like, it's like sort of like you eat, you sleep, you run. Like it's sort of a way of life for me. I mean, I can like survive without it, but I'm a much nicer, happier, better human when I have it.
Yeah. Is it an outlet for you? You'd say then? Just
definitely.
Based on what you said, yeah.
Definitely. I mean, being like there are really stressful moments when you're a sports psychologist as well. I even say like specifically during a trials period, like I get close with the athletes I work with. I really want them to win. It's heartbreaking when things go wrong for them, and it's also heartbreaking when they have things out of their control that go wrong for them. And it's, you know, when things are unfair for client, like you take some of their emotions, and running is like oftentimes where I process it and I regain perspective and I help them gain perspective. And
I was going to say that's beautiful. It is. It's sweet. And I understand like taking on that. And I've heard that as well from other professionals that not that you become like a team with them, but you want them to succeed because their success kind of feels like a reflection of your work. Yeah.
And you know everything they've put in, and like they deserve it. This is where like they deserve it just as much as the person standing next to them. But sports are like super unfair.
Yes.
And I remind people of that all the time. Like the purpose of sports is actually like people love to watch it because they love when crazy stuff happens. They like love when the underdog wins or when the favorite has something just like chokes. And without those elements, nobody would watch. But like, you're also like in my role, I'm trying to help an athlete control those elements.
Yeah. And understand like why. I mean, I think I heard it not maybe the last Olympics or like when I was younger in high school, there was a commentator, I want to say a sports psychologist, kind of describing like people will ask, you know, why did that happen in this moment? And I'm thinking, why did that happen? Yeah. And that's kind of what piqued my interest even to like doing what we do now. But have you ever thought of being, okay, this is like small analogy, but in sports, whenever a game is playing and then they bring on like the referee analysis, have you ever thought of doing something similar, but more of like a sports psychology?
I mean, I've never necessarily thought of doing that. I remember, so the last Olympic Games, when Simone Biles pulled out, I had like a handful of media requests to like talk about like, you know, what's going through an athlete's head. Like, is this a reasonable reaction to pull out of an Olympic Games? Like some of them were targeted, like, can you believe she'd let her team down? Yeah. Others of them were more like, you know, what a champion for mental health and kind of overall athlete well-being. So I remember talking a little bit like more in reflection of what was going on. But I mean, when I watched the Olympic trials with my friends, I'm like explaining to them, like I know what that look on that face means, or like, you know, what's going through, you know, some of the things that are going through their heads before they're lining up.
Yeah. And it's also really difficult to say in the moment, right? Because later, I mean, especially with Simone Biles, and she was able to talk about it and came back and is doing great.
Yeah.
So it was
totally
a really big statement from her.
Yeah.
I think that was
awesome.
That was cool. Yeah.
And
that
was great.
That was right when we were in our program.
Yeah.
And so now in today's day and age, we have more sport consultants, more people are taking it a little bit seriously, knowing that, of course, you know, we know this, but it's not just a physical game, it's a mental game as well. And then returning from injury, I remember a surgeon told me it's actually going to be 10% physical. Like, I know you're going to recover. We've stitched you up. This will be fixed. It's 90% mental. And I was thinking, okay.
Yeah.
Good to know. And I learned this when I was like 18 and had like my first ACL tear.
Yeah.
Like, what does that mean? Like, if you tell me that I'm okay, then I'm going to be okay, right? And that's what kind of just piqued my mind and like and just getting my degree in psychology.
Yeah.
But to wrap things up, what advice, or first of all, I would like people to be able to reach out to you if they are. You have a website. Would you like to share that with anyone?
Yes, of course. Yeah, it's just lenniewaite.com is my website. You can find my email there, contact information, learn a little bit about what some of the other, I have a couple other people on my team who help me out, what they do. And feel free to shoot a request for anything.
Perfect. lenniewaite.com. And finding you in person, probably difficult. So just give that calendar.
I'm around. I mean, a lot of times I'm like holed up in my home office, just like working. I see so many clients virtually these days. And sometimes I travel. Sometimes I'm on the field. Sometimes I'm out running.
So virtual access to you. And then also you offer group sessions. So my question really is to anyone who wanted to ask is, would you accept a position or contract going out to different organizations? Is that something that you do?
Yeah. So sometimes I am like people want like either like preseason speakers or maybe when they're planning just like the cadence of their season, they think, man, I would like really love to do some sports psychology, like a specific lessons throughout the season. And I'll present like, okay, well, I can come out this many times, talk about these certain topics. I generally try to get a sense of like, what has your team struggled with in the past? What are they really great at? What are you kind of preach as a coach? And then how do we build some type of mental training program that's going to supplement the athletic training program? And I challenge coaches all the time. Like at the beginning of every season, every coach is talking about the importance of mentality. And, this season we're going to build a really great mentality, and winning and losing isn't going to be about the physical. It's going to be about the mental. But it's hard for a coach to be expected to actually guide and implement that like mental training program throughout the season. So that's where I feel like a lot of times I come in, people like you can come in to kind of supplement and deliver that in a structured way that helps keep them accountable and kind of holds them to their word at the beginning of the season. The mentality is huge. So like, let's maybe we have to cut practice like 15 minutes short a few times throughout the season to remember to inject that into it.
Exactly. Yeah. I actually remember in high school, I had, or my high school coach was our psychology professor. And it was very cool because she had us all sit down in the classroom setting and we went over goals. And she asked us what our goals were, what we were going to. So instead of saying, we want to win or we want to score 10 goals, she was like, okay, how are you going to do that? And we're thinking, how are we going to do that? We need to, she goes, and it's back to the basics. It's as simple as like, how many shots do you think you need to take in order to get one goal? And we're like, I don't know. So we need to practice shooting. So we need to practice crossing, whatever. And just X, Y, and Z. And just, again, implementing that and then giving yourself actual tangible goals so that each game you're going with the mindset and then you're reminding each other each game at the start of the game, this is your goal. This is what you and your teammates decided. So there's the accountability. Here's what we can actually do. And it's just at the forefront of your mind. And I thought that was just brilliant. And it's stuck with me to this day.
Goal setting, like that kind of goal setting is like the foundation of every season. And a lot of coaches or players think they do goal setting. And then I ask them about it and I'm like, oh honey, like we gotta back up and we gotta like redo this and then we can go forward again.
I love goal setting. For me, goal setting and self-talk are big and really help me. I have 2 questions for you, and then one at the end I always like give the person the floor to say whatever they want to say. Question 1 is, what advice would you give to an athlete who is maybe struggling with their performance and they know that they're not at their peak performance, but they feel nervous to approach somebody who is a psychologist or a consultant because it's maybe frowned upon by whoever's in their environment?
I love this question. And I talk about it a lot because in one of the research studies that I did with USA Track and Field, I remember talking to the athletes about, sports psychology services, and everybody says that they want to work with a sports psychologist. Like if you ask an athlete, they're like 100%, I'd love to do that. But then the implementation of actually like reaching out and scheduling it and starting it, they oftentimes like, they get scared. They wonder like, ooh, like, actually, do I want to do this? What is this going to be like? Are they going to find out something weird about me?
Exactly.
So I try to frame it as like when you like, to me, one of the core features of resilience is support and help seeking. So a resilient person isn't somebody who does something alone in isolation and puts their head down and just like pummels through everything. They're somebody who actually like recognizes a need and goes out there and gets it. So like it's a core part of mental toughness. Like it's not the opposite end of the spectrum. It's not like, oh, I'm asking for help, which means I'm not mentally tough. It's like, no, you are so tough that and resilient, you have the awareness and you also have the belief in yourself to go out and ask for the help. Like that's incredible. So trying to just even reframe what that help seeking process looks like. And also like sports psychologists are great. Like I would say like most of us have like, it's pretty decent athletic backgrounds. When you've worked with enough athletes, there's like whenever an athlete's like, I'm going to tell you something that I feel like you've never heard before. I'm like, I'm pretty sure at this point, like maybe a few years ago, at this point, I'm pretty sure I've heard it before.
Yeah.
And honestly, like I think from a lot of my clients' experiences, just the process of like normalizing a lot of their fears, issues, things that they thought were like wrong with them and being like, no, you're human. Like that's normal.
Yeah. I love validating them in that sense. Or whenever I've heard from the small group of athletes I've worked with, it's very similar. It's like, oh, I've never actually spoken to anybody about this, but it makes sense. Or like, but that I feel so much better now.
Yeah.
Or, oh, I didn't think about it this way. And then they again, they get to work on it. And now it's like, now they're telling like, hey, actually this is cool. And then they're like telling their friends, and then I don't know. It's just like same thing for me. Whenever I finally spoke to someone, I had a little bit of fear and I was like, well, great. What is this going to be, like a counseling session? I don't know. And even in that, like I do like counseling, but I found it beneficial. And so I do appreciate, that was a really great response.
Thank you.
My other question, almost escaping my mind. No. Dang it. Oh, no, it's going to be, what is the most fulfilling thing that you do today?
Honestly, probably like cliche, probably like my children. We mentioned a little bit earlier that I'm a mom, and like, yes, that's really hard to me. Like I kind of mentioned everything that's on my plate, and I have like kind of this like high need to like go. I mean, most of my friends call me to be like, hey, Lennie, have you like taken time for yourself recently, or like have you slowed down? And generally no. My children are incredibly like grounding and centering for me. So it's sort of like the reminder if I come home, like maybe I was dealing with a crisis or like helping an athlete or like, worried about getting something done at a standard that needs to be done in time, and I walk in the door and I see them, it's like, oh my gosh, none of that like matters. Like the perspective that they can inject and how they can slow me down is the greatest gift. And honestly, probably one of the biggest, like it helps me be better at my job, because I feel like since having them, I'm so much more deliberate with the time that I have away from them working, and then very good at also much better protecting my weekends and my time with them now.
I love that. And I love children. I don't have any of my own, but I coach young kids. And for me, when my world is going crazy and when I am stressed out about other things, I have that same sense of, okay, they make the worries go away. Yes. And they're just they're so innocent and just like full of life and just full of energy and wisdom. And then, it's like it's just a little person. And then they make you think in different ways too. And I love the creativity that they have, especially at their youth. Yeah. And it's just, yeah, I love that.
Yeah. And like when I'm watching the Olympic trials now, there's been like a handful of moms that have made the team. And I think like historically we're always like, oh, like childbirth, like detrimental for performance. Like how are they ever gonna come back? And when I'm looking at these athletes, I'm like, dude, they just probably injected like an extra 5-7 years into their career, because they have like purpose, they have worth, they have balance. They have like, of course there are like the physical challenges of it. But it is like children can be incredible if it fits into your ecosystem. Yeah. And that's really cool. And it's really cool and motivating to see, because some people think that once you start having children that your career is over, but that is not the case. And so it's really cool to see, especially for me, soccer player, but seeing, Crystal Dunn and Yes. It's been incredible. Yeah. Return to play and still be at the top level. Yeah. It's like, dude, we can do it as long as people support us in doing it. It doesn't mean it doesn't mean you have to do it, but it's great to see that. I think people used to, when I was running, growing up in the sport, it was like, oh no, like once you have kids, you're like done. And I love the fact that myth is like completely debunked now. Yeah. And it is. Yeah. It really is. And we see it today. Yeah. So last thing is I normally just give the floor to whoever I'm speaking with. If you want anything else to say, a shout out, something, a quote, I don't know. No, I mean, just thank you for having me. I've like watched the Instagram reels of it, so I'm excited to see what these ones are going to be. Yeah, who knows? I'm excited too. And then everybody that's in Houston, just like stay cool this summer. Oh, yeah, I know summer just started. Oh, can't believe it. Well, cool. Thank you so much. Really, I really appreciate your time. I've been, for everyone listening, again, months in advance been asking, but I'm so thankful for your time. Thank you for your wisdom and for your advice. Yeah. If anyone wants to find Dr. Lennie Waite, it's lenniewaite.com. Yeah. Awesome. Thank you so much. And everybody have a good Thursday. Bye.